I thank my honourable friend, the member for Stockton South, for sponsoring this debate, which is of relevance to many honourable members of this place. Ipswich has sadly been at the heart of much crime and antisocial behaviour, some incredibly serious, some perhaps seemingly less serious, but perhaps connected to the more serious aspects of crime. We've had some tragic incidents in Ipswich over the last 2 years. Tavis Spencer Aitken was brutally murdered about 3 years ago outside of his father's home, and that was as a result of county lines and gang violence in Ipswich. We've also had Richard Day, who was a Ipswich man who was also killed in the town centre in tragic circumstances. And, you know, there are some things that we can do that some may say involves us getting tougher with crime, and, you know, particularly when it comes to sentencing, to make sure that those who commit the most serious crimes are appropriately punished. And from time to time, you will see me speaking to that. But also, I agree that we need to, this isn't just about having a tough approach than sentencing. We also need to get spend some time to think about the lives that a lot of these individuals lead, to put ourselves in their shoes, and to imagine that we're them, and that we're in a school where we're not successful, perhaps because we have learning disabilities. And of course, we know that the proportion of those in prison with learning disabilities is, in fact, incredibly high. So if you don't feel like a success at school because you're not getting the success you need, your needs aren't being met, you go back home and potentially there's problems with your home life, and there's nothing to do in your local area, there's no club for you to join, and you can't get a sense of belonging from anywhere. Because actually the brutal reality is that for some, joining a gang does give them a sense of belonging. So the way that you tackle that is giving them a positive sense of belonging. So actually, put yourself in their shoes, and you want to have a positive pulse, less of a negative pulse. But actually, what I wanted to talk about today was a seemingly less serious antisocial behaviour. But we say less serious, but I think it's in the minds of many of my constituents, it's very serious. Because I lose count of the number of times that I talk to constituents, long-term Ipswich residents who have lived in Ipswich their whole life, who are often critical of the town centre. Often I think they can be unfairly critical of the town centre. I think we've got some fantastic businesses in the town centre who work incredibly hard to make it an attractive destination. But most of their concerns are to do with concerns about antisocial behaviour and not feeling safe in the town centre. And actually, if we're going to have a conversation about regenerating our town centre, by all means, let's engage in a debate about business rate reform, town deals, levelling up funds. But we also need to have a conversation about crime and the fear of crime, because if that is deterring people and constituents of mine from going into the town centre to spend money, then we need to deal with that as well. And I'm going to touch upon now an issue that perhaps not everyone would agree with, and that is to do with large groups of individuals, more often than not young men, who congregate in and around the town centre. More often than not, drinking alcohol, often leaving litter afterwards, and acting in, I believe, an incredibly antisocial way. Often I've got constituents getting in contact because they themselves, or often their daughters, have been on the receiving end of inappropriate comments and been made to feel intimidated going about their business. And this is simply unacceptable. And I do talk to the police often about this, and I say, what's the opportunity to disperse these groups? Because actually I think that should be part of the police's remit. And often they say, well, unless they're clearly breaking the law and it's really, really obvious, there's nothing we can do. And actually I would personally like to see the police empowered to play their role in making our public spaces safe, secure environments in which the law-abiding majority feel safe and want to go to. And I'm going to touch this point as well, because if there is an element here which is about tolerance and tolerance being important, when it comes to antisocial behaviour, I think we should be intolerant. I think we should be intolerant of antisocial behaviour. I don't care who it is who's forming in large groups, acting in an antisocial way, making people feel uncomfortable. I don't care where they're from. Their behaviour is not acceptable, and it needs to be communicated to them. So that is a point I'd like to make. And there's a number of things that we can do, and I've touched upon one of them, and actually that's the police having more of a remit in actually being able to disperse those groups of young men who are having a detrimental impact on the town centre in Ipswich, but also, fair police funding in Ipswich. We know that Suffolk is, one of the most unfairly funded police authorities in the country. So committing to the national police funding formula review as soon as possible. But I am going on, so I better draw my comments to a close. Thank you for indulging me in going over the limit. Thank you.
Catherine McKinnell.